is a world.
This is a world premiere.
This is a world premiere.
I done been through a whole lot, trial, tribulation, but I know God.
Hey, Reg here, and welcome back to the blog and the return of the Fruitarian. It's actually day 45. So yesterday was day 44, and I thought it was day 45, but today is actually day 45, meaning I'm 3/4 of the way through my 60-day raw food challenge, and I'm pretty excited about it. I have probably spent way too much time on the vegan blogs. You know, some of it's about really kind of just learning from other people and kind of seeing how people are managing to maintain their lifestyles as vegans. And there's so much information out there, and it gets so confusing. It really is about looking at more than just, what you're eating, but like where you are and, where you are culturally as well, and what is happening with your finances. So there's so many things to consider when thinking about the type of vegan that you're going to be. And so, this raw vegan challenge has been not so much of a challenge in terms of like maintaining food, but just really thinking about how realistic it is for a person to maintain a lifestyle where, you're only consuming raw food and you're going to try to, sustain yourself in that way. And so to have some of the kind of confusing messages out there, it just makes things difficult. And in some ways I've been a little bit turned off to the vegan movement as it's represented on YouTube. And that's really unfortunate, because there's some really cool people out there, but unfortunately, like, the most popular people are really problematic. And today I want to talk a little bit about Gary Yourofsky, who I've kind of avoided, because I just kind of felt like, you know what, that's way out there on the fringe, and I just don't even want to know. But his popularity made me just want to investigate before I wrote him off as, a crackpot. So, the first thing that I want to, point out is this idea of misanthropy. And if you're going to be an activist, misanthropy and activism they don't mix. Activism often requires people to do things that are antisocial. And so to take a person who doesn't like people and give them a license to act out in ways that are antisocial are just like not really cool. To me, activism is about doing things for the betterment of humanity, right? You do things out of love of humanity. If you hate people, I think it's maybe better to just avoid them altogether. And then another thing is that Gary Yourofsky is from Detroit, which really surprised me to learn, because that city is going through an amazing growth in the food justice movement. And I think, where better for someone's leadership abilities and their position as an animal rights active to play a role. Detroit just went through a bankruptcy. So, here they have this growing urban farm movement. There's so much potential for the rethinking of the food system on a citywide scale. And Gary instead is, kind of using is kind of spouting his message. He's preaching to the choir, and he's, preaching to the elite at universities. So, again, problematic. And he's basically, now making a career peddling animal torture porn. And this accompanying, these human torture fantasies that he's spouting. He's doing this on college campuses, and he's, very popular in Israel right now, which has its own, again, there's like all kinds of problems in terms of what's happening between Israel and Palestine, and his kind of getting in that mix. And it seems like he is using animal rights as a platform to couch a message that seems mostly to be about hate and violence. And he's using it to spread a message about love and every living thing's right to live. Gary Yourofsky, in his telling of his own story, he admits that he was aware of the suffering of animals from his experiences visiting a local slaughterhouse, which he did frequently, and he documented it, and he continued to eat meat. And he even tells, the story of like making eye contact with the pig and the pig communicating with him, and how that was really transformative. But he continued to eat meat. It was some time before he stopped eating meat. And so now Gary's become a vegan and an animal rights activist, and he seems to assume a privilege where his truth must de facto be everyone else's. He calls meat eaters irrational, and he assumes that they're incapable of change without the threat of violence, which he even says about his best friend. He uses comments like every woman ensconced in fur should endure a rape so vicious that it scars them for life, and every man entrenched in fur should suffer an anal raping so horrific that they become disemboweled. Now, I hate to use biblical references, but in this case, isn't let they who are without sin cast the first stone just too good to pass up? And in the case of, whatever. And with all of that, without all these contradictions at work in a character like Gary Yourofsky, he's immensely popular. But it's been shown that narcissists are great at attracting others and gaining popularity. Hitler. The long-term outcomes for narcissists are another story, and I think Gary's story is beginning to take a tragic turn for the worst. Regardless of his popularity, I find his lack of patience and tolerance for people who are no guiltier than he once was tiresome. And I think maybe it's that deep down, Gary just doesn't believe his own message, so he needs to serve it up with a heaping tablespoon of violence. It took him 25 years to change, but he did change eventually. Gary Yourofsky was a meat eater. Gary Yourofsky wore fur. And it took him a long time knowing the truth about what he was doing before things clicked. And I just, he took the time that he needed, and, perhaps he should allow others the same thing. Or, maybe Gary is just, attention starved, so what? All right, so Gary, you have our attention. Moving on, I'm actually heading to Detroit for the weekend. So again, I have no idea, because like I told you guys early in the blog that Detroit was where I just completely fell off the food wagon, and I was, just not eating healthfully at all. So I'm hoping that when I'm out of my safe home environment that I'm just kind of able to keep things cool. I've already planned when I get back to do a couple of days of a juice cleanse, so regardless of what happens in Detroit, I'm going to come back and just kind of have a little bit of a reset planned. I hope things are okay though, and I'm sure things will be okay. I've been listening to the Chainsmokers, who have been just releasing single after single like all through the summer, and it's continued through the fall. And the song that I'm really loving of theirs right now is Roses, featuring Roses. That's it for today. I hope it hasn't been too much of a rant. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. This is Reg signing out on day 45, the actual day 45 of my 60-day raw food challenge. Love yourself. Have a great one. Peace.
I love myself.